So welcome everyone. Appreciate you taking the time to join us today on the think tank. As Marta was just explaining, it being the kind of the conversational structure of this call, we really appreciate any inputs from the people on the call. If you do have any experience or anecdotal evidence to talk to specific points, they're very highly welcome and appreciated. That kind of how these calls become really useful. Um, but yeah, as additionally, this is not really kind of comprehensive of the entire research. There were a lot of additional findings and ways of structuring the analysis that didn't make it into this think tank just because we did want to focus more on the conversation. So with that said, we'll get started with a quick introduction of Kaba. Marta or Greg, would you like to just give a quick overview of Kaba?
Greg, would you like to take that one?
Sure. I think most on the call are aware of CABA, but for those that aren't, we're an international trade association that deals with technology and particularly IT technology and other sort of technologies related to homes and buildings. And this is one of our landmark research projects that we do every year. And this one is on the residential. So we basically pool funds from our members and give it to a research firm to conduct a research project on the members' behalf. And we also do a newsletter out to 19,000 subscribers, and we have some council meetings as well, and other sort of activities like podcasts and whatnot. So yeah, our goal and our mission is really for a 10,000 foot level is really just to advance the industry forward in as a not-for-profit in the space of technology in the entire built environment. Thanks.
Great, thank you. And Harbor Research is a research and consulting firm that's been around for over 30 years and focused on emerging technologies and specifically around smart systems and the Internet of Things. We've been working with Kaba for a few years now and have led landmark research reports for both the buildings and the home side for the past few years. So have had quite a lot of experience with Kaba and the built environment as well. So with that, we can jump to the next slide here. All right, so just wanted to give a thank you to the steering committee. So these projects are led by a steering committee of organizations that have a key interest in the subject matter and want to kind of also really morph the project, make sure that it gets to the right findings and has the right kind of detail needed for them to be able to strategize around. So so thank you to all the steering committee members that kind of played a role in this project so far. Yeah. So just jumping into some of the key background and market dynamics around smart home energy management, and just to kind of maybe even preface that, so the project really kind of went through a number of different steps to get to the findings that we did get to, and those included primary research in the form of a survey, 2 surveys, as well as primary research interviews. The surveys were targeted at both building occupants as well, so no, the survey was targeted at smart home owners or just homeowners in general, and kind of looking at both of those groups and getting kind of an idea on some of the specifics around that. And so in addition to that, there was a lot of secondary research that was also conducted to support the material that we have put together for this report. And of course, lastly, our own kind of previous experience in this industry and around smart homes and smart systems. So with that, some of the key market forces that we see as affecting smart home energy management, including expanding smart home environment, which includes a number of new devices, some of which are focused on energy management and efficiency, and others on convenience and personalization. But in general, that space is growing, and with it comes potential for energy management solutions to grow. We also see the grid integration as a major kind of trend in that area that's also kind of creating potential for value around energy management. And then the impact of COVID and just people spending more time at home, meaning that they are just using more energy likely and would want to see potential changes of that. But additionally to that, just the increase in energy prices that have occurred over the past few years after kind of the pandemic, or at least the volatility around them. So additional trends that we believe were key to this smart home energy management market include home automation, electric vehicle proliferation, which obviously kind of brings with it a high cost of energy in the home, connectivity improvements and sensor proliferation in the home, homes sold with built-in management systems for energy, distributed energy, clean energy, and sustainability trends, as well as smart heating and cooling innovations. Yeah, so if we move on to the next slide here, Marta. So we also just wanted to highlight the fact that energy management is and the focus on energy management is largely tied to energy price spikes. And you could see the case study of the European energy crisis in the past few years, and how there's been a noticeable increase in adoption of these types of systems to try and manage and create more predictability around those costs. So yeah, in general, as energy prices rise, people become more and more aware of the need for certain systems to control and predict future energy costs and needs in their home. And that's kind of one of the main drivers as we found it in actually adopting these solutions. And really the cursory of that is if energy prices were to become lower for longer and really kind of not represent as much of an issue for the homeowner, then adoption can also see a downtick there as well. Great. So if we move on. So some of the key elements that we think are also affecting this market and that are building the requisite habits needed for energy management include smart home hubs, as well as voice assistants and wearables. So smart hubs have become relatively popular. If you think of your Alexas and your Google Nest and all that, it's essentially just allows you to integrate different systems in the home and be able to communicate them using voice technology. And wearables have also taught people to just analyze and monitor specific data, such as their health and wellness data, using a digital interface. And what we think is possible is that the combination of these two technologies is going to set the stage for the right types of habits associated with energy management. Essentially, managing your home using the smart hubs, and then also understanding how to monitor and improve specific kind of KPIs, I guess, metrics associated with cost around the home as well. Okay, so if we move on. So we, as I mentioned, ran a survey of homeowners and asked a number of questions, and really this doesn't do it justice, the next few slides here, but there were over 45 questions in the survey, and we really did tackle kind of a number of different topics, including trying to profile different respondents and trying to understand how those profiles related to different questions we were asking, but also just kind of to go through the whole process of beginning to get awareness of energy management needs, monitoring them, going to learning about different potential tools, purchasing and subscribing to tools and devices and anything you need to kind of really investing in the home in that sense to try and reduce costs or make them more predictable, and specifically kind of ownership of subscriptions and things around SHEMS itself. And so one of the key areas that we thought were interesting was that EVs and renewable energy investments are driving higher interest in monitoring of energy. So this is, we wouldn't make the immediate jump here to that, EV ownership or renewable energy, such as solar panel ownership, will lead to specifically ownership of these energy management systems. However, we do think that they kind of pique people's curiosity as far as energy monitoring, and we could see that pretty obviously in the data, as most of the individuals who have installed renewables or EVs spend a lot more time, or are generally agreed more often to whether or not they monitor their energy habits and bills. So it does create that level of interest, which can then be capitalized on, and they can then be kind of brought into potential solutions and made customers. If we move forward here to the next slide. So the next thing we wanted to discuss is just that awareness and adoption of smart home energy management systems is still low. So it's pretty important that industry members generally raise awareness around these potential use cases and benefits around energy management systems in the home, how they can lower bills, how they can help with sustainability. We obviously have a few opinions and have kind of redeveloped them in the report further as far as the types of target users and users that would be the best types of customers. And we have a little bit of that in here as well, but a lot more detailed in the actual report. But yeah, we do see that most people haven't heard of energy management systems before. About only 30% have, 32% have heard of home energy management systems, and which is a pretty low kind of percentage. A certain amount was interested in learning more, which showed a little curiosity there, but overall it shows that although there's growing need that we could have we showed in different portrayals in the actual report that there's growing need for this stuff. It's not necessarily that people understand that or are aware of the tools available in the market and what they can apply in their home. And so that's one thing that we think is key, is just developing awareness around it. And to do that is pretty expensive. Learning curves are expensive. And part of our recommendations is just to focus on the right target segments, because those costs can balloon. And like targeting people such as EV owners is a good example of how you could kind of minimize costs associated with that learning curve. Moving along here. So one of the key concerns driving the curiosity around energy management has been rising energy costs. It is the most, it was the one that was kind of like most selected when asked about driving factors to start thinking about energy management systems. So this question was specific to those who were aware and had these systems. However, what it showed is that rising cost was the main contributor there. Awareness of the technology was another important one. Wastefulness was key. Availability of rebates and general improvements to comfort and convenience were all kind of some of the higher chosen options there. And as far as energy bills changing, it does seem across the board that there is a change, at least 15% changes in energy bills across the board. I think this is obviously very volatile and it depends on area, but those areas that have seen higher energy bill increases are the ones that are more likely to adopt energy management systems. All right, if we move ahead here. So jumping into just the sustainability concerns. So we were a little surprised by this. We expected sustainability concerns to be a little bit more widespread as far as how concerned people are and the relative importance of that value proposition to energy management systems. However, it does seem that although a good portion of the survey respondents did seem to care about sustainability, what was more important was generally kind of the cost aspects of it. There's the way that we described it in the report is it's not that people don't care about sustainability and that it's not a good value proposition. It's just a secondary value proposition next to costs, really, and that's across the board, including EV owners and renewable energy owners. As especially with EV owners, they see these ballooning costs as their primary kind of issue that they need to fix, as opposed to the sustainability issue, which they're fixing by owning an EV. Um, yeah, so moving along, we have, so we do have a number of recommendations in the report that really exceed what we have here, but I just wanted to highlight a few and show you the kind of structure that we were, putting these recommendations into. And essentially, one of them is just that the rising cost of living and energy price volatility is key to identifying the right markets. Uh, Households that are burdened by high energy costs are particularly more likely to adopt these systems. And this one was across the board, regardless of income level. Um, so what we suggest is identifying those regions that do have those higher costs right now, and targeting those customers so that those who can benefit most from smart home energy management systems. We do think that partnerships and collaborations along the way with local utility companies, local government, and NGOs would be useful to creating awareness about the benefit of SHEMS, and to offer incentives as well. So this is just from a go-to-market perspective. Um, but yeah, it is one thing, obviously different parts of the country, different parts of the US and Canada also just have different energy costs. And I think people have to deal with that in different ways. And so targeting the areas where it is more expensive is key. Moving along, we do have a recommendation here just around the key personas that are likely to adopt energy management solutions. And right now, it's those kind of early adopter tech obsessed individuals who are driven by innovation and are usually kind of the first to experiment in new products. It's important that these people find it intriguing and that it enhances their efficiency, because they're usually eager to share their results and experiences with others. And so it's an important group to get right, but generally targeting these individuals can be done through YouTube, podcasts, online tech newsletters, and blogs, or you could run display ads and sponsored content on technology-oriented websites and forums as well. Then you have energy conscious individuals, and those are, obviously the ones that are prioritizing cost savings and energy efficiency. So this group tends to be a little bit more practical and focuses on those tangible cost-based benefits. So it's important to kind of message that in the marketing there, and developing informative content around that. But again, displaying just creating ads based on through utility companies, through kind of bundle services and rebates, incentives, all that is also a way to get to these individuals, as they'll be kind of more likely to be searching for those solutions. And additionally, targeted ads could also be useful, particularly if they've searched for any type of energy management solutions in the past. Good. So we mentioned EV ownership and charging recommendations. So homeowners who have bought EVs have, obviously seen a high increase in the cost of energy from month to month. And so their attention after that pretty much is focused on how can they kind of reduce those costs. And our opinion is that smart home energy management systems is a direct path to offsetting those unexpected or ballooning costs. And it's important to, integrate with EV charging hardware, potentially at the point of sale, as an upsell or a free incentive to get people to really understand the value of it. But alternatively, just in terms of technology, be very kind of specific to showing data around EV monitoring, specific costs associated with your EV, different times, different strategies for reducing those costs, things like that that are very EV focused. And again, targeting those individuals through online display advertising or at the point of sale is both, pretty direct and I think, relatively easy with regards to online advertising. But yeah, outside of that, I think so. These recommendations went through the first one. Yeah, I think generally developing those user-friendly interfaces is key, and making sure that the software is compatible with all of the existing EV charging hardware is also important there. But with that said, those are just a couple of examples of recommendations, 2 or 3 examples there of the type of recommendation that we put in the report. There are quite a few more And yeah, I just wanted to share that. I'll open up the floor for discussion. If people have questions, please feel free to shoot them in the chat, or just yeah, or just raise your hand, I guess. Yeah, Oren. Hello.
Just note that you can unmute yourselves if you'd like to contribute to the
There we
conversation.
go. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we
Yes.
can, Oren.
Okay, my question was, what are you defining as a smart home energy management system for the purpose of this discussion? What's the scope? Is Nest thermostat, for example, considered in that category?
Yeah, I think it would be kind of one of this kind of a more specific use case for an energy management system in the home. I think we're also looking at more comprehensive ones as kind of the key focus
Okay,
of the research. So just kind of looking at it's essentially just tools that are, you know, across the home for multiple different purposes, potentially including energy management, but you know, even others. So I can send over a list of some of the examples that we had. I don't think I have it in this specific.
okay. Just curious, the scope of, you know,
Yeah.
when you talk about then smart energy management system owner, how specific that scope was.
Yeah, no, so we did for, okay, so I understand. Yeah, no, that was pretty open because like if you were asking for something pretty comprehensive, we were expecting a very low you know, group of people, a small number of people that would actually answer yes. So we did keep it to just any type of general software that's helping you manage costs in your
Okay.
home as far as energy. Yeah.
So this is Ken Wax. You didn't give examples or lead the responders.
No.
It was up to them to decide what constituted an energy management system.
Well, we defined it. We defined it as a, you know, essentially a tool used, a software tool used in order to manage and control costs of energy in the home. But then, yeah, that was pretty generally open to their interpretation from there.
Yeah, because I mean, here in Southern California, probably the number one energy user for at least half the year is air conditioning, and now number two is definitely EV charging.
Right.
So those two things, which seem to be the main drivers of energy cost, and they're both time related.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think the big issue these days is not so much reducing energy as trying to reallocate it to times when energy is available and restrict it during times when energy is scarce.
Yeah, I think that's a fair statement, and also kind of what we were looking at as well, and especially with the EV story, there's you know, people will generally plug it in at the same time. They don't all need to be charging at the same time.
Were you able to determine that how many customers are subject to any sort of incentives or information about better times to charge per the last slide you showed?
With regards to better times, we didn't. We do have a question around rebates and government incentives, but unfortunately we didn't have one that was specific to their knowledge around like cheaper times and whether they actually kind of think about it that way.
Yeah,
Well, I was asking, do you know of how many locations in North America have an option for cheaper times?
Oh, not off the, no, we didn't actually go through that specific research, but I imagine we could find it pretty easily if it's something that's pretty important to you.
I mean, for example, here we have an option for time of use billing for electric vehicles that does offer cheaper charging rates, but it's such a confusing set of parameters that I'm not convinced that I'd actually save money by switching to their savings plan and then readjusting the EV chargers to only charge during the off-peak periods. it's too complicated, and there doesn't seem to be a good guide to understanding the relationship.
Yeah, I think this is Chris Larry. We have a couple projects that we do for clients around the country. And I think that's where the smart building really would be, have a lot of potential, because a lot of utilities have a day ahead rate. And so unless a customer's looking at rates daily, they're not going to be able to manage how their batteries are going to be charging, whether they're charging, discharging, or how that works. The smart system could easily, if it was in, all the data was pulled together in a nice format, that's how you would do it.
Yeah, I haven't seen technology that will comprehensively look at all those factors on the broad available scale. There are pieces of it. I have an energy management system that'll tell me what I'm using, and I have a car that I can tell when to charge, and I have an electrical company that'll give me variable rates. But as far as putting all those pieces together and understanding the holistic solution, that seems to be pretty hard to find.
No, that's the holy grail.
Yes. It shouldn't be that hard to find, but it is.
I mean, once all that data is pulled together, it's pretty simple. But pulling all the data together and all those three people talking, and that's what CABA
Right.
does. So,
Well, then,
that's what
yeah,
this
I mean,
is
that
all
was
about.
my point, is that that's something CABA could do, is try to pull those factors together. It ought to be simple for a customer to go online somewhere and say, I have 2 electric vehicles, I'm in this location, my air conditioning uses so much power, and which of these rates are going to give me a better deal from month to month throughout, because it's obviously going to change throughout the year, and lay it all out so that you can make a decision.
Yeah, there are car manufacturer battery technology manufacturers that have that internal, but they don't share that data with other
Right.
open protocols. So you basically have to go to them to get it.
Car manufacturers?
Well, I don't want to name names.
Okay, I'm not sure which data you're looking for from them. What does, you're talking about the car battery status?
Yeah, there's a certain manufacturer that makes electric vehicles that have a car battery that can tie into a home battery of the same manufacturer.
Oh,
that
yeah.
runs the PV system that can also be tied to their meter.
Well, that's
Ties all that
technology
together.
that's coming on the larger scale. Several manufacturers have announced 2-way charging systems. The question is it gonna make enough of a difference to be worth the cost? That's the calculation that's hard. That's the holy grail.
Yeah,
For
we've
X
seen
number of
it.
dollars.
We've seen that it does. There is a benefit there.
Okay.
So there's a market.
Yeah, I think batteries are clearly the major part of the solution here, whether they're in a vehicle or in a home, but it doesn't look like the technology has quite gotten to the point where the cost is enough to warrant the investment, at least on the home scale.
Hi, David. I think you have your hand up.
Yeah, hi guys, Dave Kaufman from Residio. Great discussion. Thanks, Jamel and Harbor for doing all this. And full disclosure, I'm one of the steering committee members for this research. I also want to thank my other folks, steering committee folks, and others that helped with this. Right, Brown, Newtone, Ream, Snap One, Honda, and Thread rather. So appreciate everyone's support in getting this funded and getting this out in front of us. And as part of a think tank, I always like to throw out what can we do as an industry to help this move forward. Shem is moving forward. So it's kind of like a rising tide raises all ships. It's kind of like, think about Got Milk, right? The milk industry puts out milk promotions so people will go buy milk, right? It's like it's all funded by, like a milk, a milk consortium, a milk foundation. I don't understand that business well enough to know. Maybe you guys do. But there's you get these Got Milk, and they're not like promoting a certain guy's milk or a certain manufacturer's milk. It's like just milk, right? Go drink milk, and that helps the whole industry, right? So I'm ripping off the ideas you guys had here a minute ago that said, hey, let me step back one more step. So also one of the things that it seemed here in general was that was just awareness of Shems, right? That there are some things that are emerging that are kind of waking people up. The rising price of energy, EVs being bought now, and all of a sudden my electric bill is going up. I'm now seeing I'm spending more money there. So there's these kind of emerging wake up calls around energy and potentially would lead to Shems. But the other thing you guys said that I thought it was interesting is like, what could Kaba do, right? What could we do in general? And somebody was mentioning about, gosh, if we could just like help in different areas, help people understand that based on the factors that they have, price of energy or the time of use, plans they're on and all that kind of stuff. And that gets very specific. But what if Kaba just created like a Shems calculator? Right. So think about the mortgage calculator, right? You go in and you create a mortgage calculator. There's a mortgage calculator that just goes in there and takes some factors in and then kind of tells you what your mortgage is going to be, right? So what if we created like a Shems calculator and then Kaba could do this, right? It could be up on the website. It could be something that is kind of like that Got Milk thing, right? It's like, hey, see if you should be looking into Shems, right? Do you have an EV? What's your current energy prices? Just create this calculator that then kind of comes back and says, hey, you're a good candidate for Shems, right? So maybe there's something like that we could do within Kaba that could be, something we could do as a group. I'd love to get your guys' opinion on that, right? I'm just throwing this out. I'm just spitballing, but I'd love to get, and maybe you guys will riff off that idea to another idea. So I'm not wedded to that. I just wanted to throw that out to get some thoughts.
No, I think that idea would work. I think it would be fairly generic and simplistic, but it would get you in a ballpark because, the day ahead pricing, you don't really know what it's going to be. But there are, peak times and off-peak times, and you can do the calc pretty simply.
Yeah, I think those calculators exist, but none of them are very complete, and they're all very regional. If Kaba could put them all together and come up with, an umbrella or calculator that would take those individual things, you tell people where you live and who your power company is, and you can put that into the calculations, that would be very useful because what's out there, there's some stuff from the car manufacturers, there's some stuff from the power utilities, there's some stuff from the government, but none of it is comprehensive.
But I think part of the challenge is that the calculator is one piece of the puzzle, right? Because as a consumer, if you go and you use the calculator, and you realize that you can save money here or there, it's like, okay, great, now what, right? The calculator isn't going to tell you what you need to do next. And I think, part of the research that was presented here today, only about 30% of the people know what energy management is.
Well, the calculator is going to tell you that there's a range of activities that you can do personally that will lower your costs. And that's the first step towards actually doing something about it. I mean, when I first put in an energy management system, it told me within the first 2 days that I had a refrigerator in my garage that needed to go. It was it was very loud and clear. It wasn't like maybe I should do this or maybe I shouldn't. It was like 30% of your energy is trying to cool a dead refrigerator. So having the awareness is a real key to implementing a solution.
The
Yes,
challenge CABA has, if it were to do the Shem's calculator, is to get the data. One thing that Oren touched on, with the regionalization of energy between the US and Canada, we probably have 3,200 utilities.
Right.
It's just not practical CABA to collect the data from all these locations.
Well, you need ChatGPT or something to pull all that together, but it's certainly more doable than it was 20 years ago when we
Or could
first
it be,
tried.
guys, that sorry to step on somebody there, or could it be that the calculator just captures your data and just runs the evaluation? I don't need to know all 3,200 utilities. Well, how does your utility price you, right? And now I know you're asking the consumer to go in and actually enter some stuff, but is there a way that the calculator could actually capture the generic information that will again, this is about awareness, right? It's about saying, hey, you're a candidate. You should think about putting the Shems in, right? And a lot of this will come just from the core answer of, hey, are you putting in an EV? You know, and they're like, oh, yeah, I'm thinking about that. Well, did you think about Shems? I mean, there's some of this stuff that's like almost black and white, right? That came out of this research. So I think, in trying to get this down to trying to get down to the very detailed engineering answer, it's like there's some generic big picture things that if you answer it, you're probably a pretty good candidate for Shems, right? So I don't want to get too hung up on over engineering it, right? And just rather to create more awareness that having the calculator, and it's got to be effective, guys. I know it can't just be this, mamby-pamby, thing, right? This thing that doesn't really give you a good assessment, but it would lead someone. The goal here is that once you get done with that, then it's going to lead somebody to go do research, to the point that was made earlier by someone on the call, right? Either you're going to go Google Shems, or you're going to go find out more about Shems, or perhaps, CABA is part of the calculator. There's people that fund the calculator, and they're part of, what gets spit out as part of the calculator. Oh, by the way, you're a Shems candidate. No, here's some that are part of the CABA organization, right? That are now part of the, developing and creating that calculator. The people that also get promoted as Shems guys that can offer Shems. So I think there's a win-win-win here, right? And I agree, we can't over-engineer it, but it could be something that CABA could be the conduit to go help make that happen.
Well, I think the other thing is that many people already have Shems in one form or another. If you have a home EV charger, almost all of them have the ability to say when they're going to charge and when they're not. If you have a smart thermostat, almost all of them are going to give you an option as to when you're going to go into energy saving mode and when you're not. And most utilities will give you some kind of rate that gives you some incentives for shifting your energy. So you have the ability to do all that. The hard part is to say, well, if I don't want to, how uncomfortable will I be at 4 o'clock in the afternoon? And how difficult will it be not having my car charging until after 9 p.m. versus how much money am I going to save if I implement this utility policy?
Exactly. You just explained the problem, right? We got siloed solutions out there that you can go manage.
The solutions are there.
Manage it for you.
The management is the hard part.
There is one way we could do this where instead of actually getting all the data from the different locations, we just ask people for their monthly bill on average, and then also ask specific information like, do you have an EV? Do you set it to charge at a specific time or just whenever? And once we've gotten enough detail, we can probably make assumptions around how much an energy management system can then help them.
And how could you determine whether an energy management system would help them?
Well, it'd be based on their energy habits as well as the cost in that area, depending on kind of the input.
But that's the point. You just hit the nail on the head. You
Right.
need the data.
Yeah, but they can give you the cost per month that they pay, and then you can kind of correlate that with. how
If
big
you
that
ask me
house
my
is.
cost, I tell you it's 10 cents a kilowatt hour, 24 hours a day. What are you going to do with that?
Well, no, I would more be asking for your monthly cost, and then try to get a number of inputs around, how large your house is, your specific habits, and then from that, make a certain set of assumptions around the areas where you could benefit. I mean, it's still it's not scientific. It's more kind of just like ballpark. at the end of
Well,
the day.
a monthly rate isn't going to tell you anything because the rates cycle throughout the year. You're going to pay way more in the summer for electricity and way more in the winter for gas.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
at least here.
That's a California answer, Oren.
Right. Well, I mean, in general, you're going to, most places at least in the,
I pay the same year round for electricity.
you're paying
Because
the same year?
my town has an aggregator deal for 10 cents a kilowatt hour.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Yeah,
It's
we
not
don't,
it's not California.
well, aren't you using more kilowatt hours for air conditioning in the summer than you are for heating in the winter?
Yes, but the
Okay.
rate's the same.
The rate's the same, but the savings, the energy management equation is different.
Yeah, but it's money. I either write the check in December or I write it in July. It's total is the same.
So you mean the total over the year?
If I were charging an EV and I were on a flat rate like I am, I'm indifferent as to when it's charged. Now, that doesn't mean that the utility might not have some overloads in a transformer, but so far the utility either hasn't had the problem and therefore hasn't adjusted the rates, or it's simply not a problem.
Well, you're on the East Coast. It's definitely a different situation.
Yeah.
than people out west. I mean, here the utilities have a problem and they're offering rates for EVs and rates for energy management, but the rates are so cryptic that, you know, they raise the rates during the peak hours and they lower the rates during the off-peak hours. And then you're left saying, well, you know, how much can I change my distribution by, you know, programming? I have the hardware. I mean, I have a charger and I have a thermostat. I could program the stuff in, but I can't tell if it's going to save me any money or just put me through a whole bunch of headaches.
Guys, yeah, you're hitting on some really key points here, right? So there's a spectrum, right, for this calculator. First off, I'm glad you guys are having this discussion and debating this a bit, because I'm still on the fence of whether CABA should move forward with it or not and explore it more. And it sounds like maybe we should, but there is that spectrum where you really need the data, the local data, and what it means to me, right? And I know that when people came around and tried to sell me solar panels, I'm in Arizona, right? So they're trying to sell me solar panels in Scottsdale. You know, they came on, they asked me for 12 months of, you know, of energy information, 12 months of bills, right? This was like 4 or 5 years ago. And I ran through the data with them, right? It was very specific and, you know, got a cost of the solar panels and then got a return on investment. I didn't pull the trigger because it was like I don't know, 8 or 9 year return on investment. I didn't want to go invest in that, but and then there's the other extreme where you just have very, very, you know, simple calculators that just kind of directionally kind of give you a hint that maybe you should think about, you know, solar panels, for instance, in that instance. So there's a spectrum here. The question is, I think we gotta, and that's why we have these think tanks, is, you know, should we explore this with CABA? Would this be good for CABA? Should we create like a tiger team that goes off and has this discussion we're having here in more detail for those that might be interested in wanting to go create that calculator and have that put up on CABA? So I'm interested in that too. Or is this like, no, it's a bad idea, don't do it, this makes no sense, there's a better idea, let's just go do advertising, you know, just general advertising, CABA can go do that, right? So I'm just trying to think about what can we do as an industry and that how CABA can help, and where 1 + 1 = 3.
I think we have to ask what's good for CABA.
Yeah.
What defines a goal for CABA in relationship to all this?
Yeah, as a board member for CABA, I think the goal is you want to, you know, have CABA be as valuable as possible, right? And so this calculator, you know, really kind of pulls more towards the end consumer versus, you know, actual manufacturers like us, right? To go, but the manufacturers could go and help with this calculator, but then it's got to get out to the consumers, and maybe that gets out to the consumers through the manufacturers, right? So there's still that all to be figured out, right? Because CABA is more of an industry organization, not so much of a consumer facing, right, per se. So
Right.
I think there's an opportunity there that could be explored, but you know, I can't do it alone, or I'm not the only guy that can drive that. But if there's interest, you know, in general, that from folks either on this think tank or maybe Greg, we bring this up to the board as one of the think tank items that came up, right? For people to if they're interested and they have SHEMS products that they're going to bring to market, maybe there is this joint effort around a SHEMS calculator that then CABA goes and develops and then tries to market that out to the industry, maybe through the manufacturers, right?
Good
Yeah,
point.
I think the key is just to get that collaboration between between all the parties involved before we distribute it out. But we need to really flush it out. What exactly is the offer, and we'll need to investigate it further. That's for sure. Or maybe if it's a portion of in the future project with those marketing trends and incorporating into that future project, that could be an option also.
I'm sure Harvard would be happy for us to invest in them to go figure out the calculator.
To what extent
Right,
is
Jamil?
CABA
No doubt.
influenced by the utilities themselves? Is there a large utility presence in CABA?
We used to have a stronger utility presence, and with Southern California Edison and Hydro Quebec and Hydro One.
Right.
And there seems to be a less of a presence from the utilities, but we do still have a few utilities involved. But yeah, it's
That's kind of the key to this, is utility participation.
Oren, this is Ken Wax. I
Yes.
would make the
I
observation.
know your voice, Ken. It's only been 30 years.
Okay. I would make the observation that as we move more towards the edge of the grid, we really are getting into the consumer electronics space. And
Yeah.
I wouldn't expect the utilities to be as central a focus on energy management programs as they've been in the past. So I am looking to the consumer electronics industry to take a more leading role. And I chair the World Standards Bodies, where we're writing the
Right.
standards for consumer-facing energy management. And that's the direction we're taking.
Well, I mean, clearly, in terms of adjustable rates and time of use rates, the utilities play a large part in the cost structure of electrical power. It's also clear on the consumer electronic side that batteries are probably the key technology to moving this whole thing forward. And I mean, that is something we really need to focus on, both the technology and the marketing of batteries to accomplish the time shifting of energy use between peak power demand and low power demand. Again, that might not apply in Boston. But I think if you look at the consumer side, you have to look at battery technology and what CABA can do to drive that.
Yeah, great discussion, guys. Maybe we can just table this, and Greg, maybe we can take it offline, maybe to take it to the board, just as some feedback that came from the think tank for them to think about. I think the idea that was brought up, and again, I don't know all the names or the voices other than Ken's, but brought up the idea that maybe you do this in a very scrappy piloted kind of way with one utility, right? To just say, hey, let's work with the utility. We know their rates, we know what's going on. Let's go create that calculator. Let's promote that calculator to their, to their region, and just see if this thing works. Don't try and do this in a big broad scale. Pick one utility, just try it, right? On a very scrappy piloted kind of basis. Don't put a bunch of big, huge investment in, just try it. See if it works or not. See if it leads us to something that we could make broader and do a got milk kind of thing, right? For the industry.
Yeah, well, you could pick, I know, for example, Southern California Edison does have such a calculator. It just doesn't work very well.
Yeah.
Maybe you could start with one of those companies and say, how can we make this calculator actually have value to your customers?
Yeah, kind of juxtapose that against this research we just learned, right? We know awareness is important. We know the drivers. We know what's going to cause people to want to go, move off the dime. How do we now take this research, take the manufacturers that are interested in SHEMS, and take a utility like SCE and say, how do we package that all up to maybe create the next generation of your calculator, right? That and try and drive this a bit more for energy management in your territory or your part of the country that you service.
That sounds like a good idea.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, we can definitely take this as a takeaway to the board, put on the agenda item to discuss what are the next steps of dealing with this or not dealing with this, and go from there. And if we have to create a task force, then we can just create that and figure out what the next steps are.
Sounds good. Thanks, Greg.
Yeah, there are, I mean, for example, you're probably familiar with Emporia Energy out of Colorado. They offer a device that is like $25 that for the utilities that support it can actually read the electric meter data in real time, get the Zigbee data from the meter and present it to the customer in real time. As a low-cost solution to figuring out what your actual energy consumption is. So there are some solutions on the consumer electronic side that are very low cost for the information that they provide.
Actually, on that note, this is Golam. There was a green button initiative from the DOE. I think that asked basically utilities. I don't know if all utilities did that, but I think they provided to the customers, to the consumer or the resident, that they can click on the green button data and then pull their in-trouble data.
The green button initiative still exists, and it's basically historical data. It's not real-time data.
Yeah.
Got it.
Historical data is very difficult to sort out unless you sit there all day long with the stopwatch, noting when you turn things on and off. But the real-time data is a lot more useful. And of course, if you have energy management that's per circuit, then you can start to get useful data that actually tells you how much power things are using. And that's incredibly useful data and actionable data, but it's also takes a bit of work on the part of the consumer to install it.
Got it. I also noticed that there are a lot of solar PV installers that provides the energy visibility with the real time. I think some of them even have a rate tariff, like only they would. I don't know how much. Probably some limited database because it's very hard to have all the rate tariffs from all the utilities. But they have some type of import or some type of built-in libraries, but those can change. I do not know how often they refresh but just sharing that out.
Yeah, they always have something, but it's not always useful. And that's part of the problem. That's why CABA getting involved would be interesting because what we're talking about is not stuff that's impossible to do. It's something that everybody's already doing badly.
I hear you.
So there's a way to take all the non-actionable solutions and put them all together into a package that might actually give people actionable data, which is to say, hey, I see the results of this data and I know what to do about it. As opposed to, oh, that's interesting. That would be useful.
And I think with that, thank you, Oren. Really appreciate you participating in the conversation today, and everyone else as well. Thank you to Charlie, Dirk, and David Kaufman, and everyone involved in the conversation today, Ken Wax and Golam.
Yes.
With that, I think we are approaching the top of the hour. I'd like to thank everyone in attendance today. Jamil, thank you kindly for your presentation, for all the great work that Harbor did on the project. For those who are interested in obtaining the executive summary for this report, it will be on our website shortly, within the next week or so. And there is a 4-month embargo on the report itself, but it will be available for purchase in November for anyone, for any organization that is interested in purchasing that. If you'd like, you can reach out to myself or Greg if you would like to discuss funding our future projects. We do have two, one for the smart home happening in the next week or two. And this week we'll begin our intelligent buildings research for 2023.